In this hour with the Department of Homeland Security shutdown. Funding ran out just after midnight amid an impasse in Congress, and Democrats say they won't approve additional money for DHS without reforms. But ICE will still be able to tap into all that money, $75 billion, to keep the agency running as usual due to President Trump's tax and spending law. It comes as this week White House border czar Tom Homan announced an end to the immigration enforcement surge in Minnesota. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey both cautiously welcomed the drawdown.
The fact of the matter is, they left us with deep damage, generational trauma. They left us with economic ruin in some cases. They left us with many unanswered questions.
They were looking to implement a national agenda based on coercing us to change local policy. And here's the thing, we didn't. The people of Minneapolis stood up. They stood up for their neighbors. They loved on each other. And I think that's the kind of patriotism that is ultimately going to get us through this.
Meanwhile, activists from Minnesota held a rally at the U.S. Capitol this week, urging lawmakers to hold the line on DHS funding.
The least our representatives could do is confront this administration, use the power of the purse, and cut off the flow of funds to ICE and CBP.
If you truly want to protect children, don't vote for a bill that provides ICE with more money to continue harming those children and families.
Joining us now are Minnesota State Senator Erin Maye Quade and Minnesota State Representative Brad Tapke, who are part of that Minnesota delegation that came to D.C. this week. Thank you both for sticking around in D.C. and talking with us. I want to start with how the community, how you guys are feeling after weeks of feeling under siege, right? After weeks of watching your neighbors, both citizen and non-citizen alike, be dragged and hurt and be shot. And now hearing that the administration is says they're going to draw down to pre-surge levels. So I'll start with you.
Well, I think the important thing to know is that right now the conditions on the ground in Minnesota have not changed. Yeah. And I can tell you in my community, it's worse. Mm-hmm. They are aggressively going after observers. They are following people, boxing them in. They're still at the bus stops. They're still at the schools. I just got a text from my superintendent last night informing me of ICE presence at a school, at an elementary school. And so the last time they introduced a drawdown, they said we're going to have 700 agents removed. They shifted to targeting children. And there is a feeling on the ground of what is this drawdown mean? What is the shift? And right now the shift has been more aggression.
Representative Tapke, do you feel the same?
Yeah, we're very much in a trust but verify type mode right now. Like we have everyone in our community has all been harmed by ICE. It's been just a terrible, terrible thing that's been happening. And we've heard things before from the administration that they are going to do X or Y or Z. And there's just no trust that they're actually going to do what they say they're going to do. And so we need to make sure that we continue the pressure and continue to work to get them out of our community.
Yeah. I think something that we haven't devoted enough of the conversation to, granted because there's been a lot more dramatic things to focus on and urgent things, is the economic damage that this surge has done. Is there any plan to, if and when ICE does ultimately leave, do you all have any plan underway to try to backfill and replenish these small businesses and all of these people who have essentially disappeared?
Yeah, we've been working really, really hard to make sure to take care of our people. Like that's our number one thing that we've been doing is making sure that we have hundreds of people in my community. We have 45,000 people in Shakopee, and hundreds of people are gone and missing. And it is that is our number. We've had our head down, protecting our communities and working to take care of our neighbors and supporting our small business. We have lots of immigrant-owned small businesses in Shakopee, and it's really, really important that we take care of those. And but right now, we've had our head down, protecting and working together with our people to make sure that we are, kids are taken care of and they get to school, and just those basic everyday life kinds of things is where we've been at.
Representative, you just made me smile because it's I've never heard Shakopee mentioned outside of Minnesota. and as everyone knows, I went to Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota, and I was there last weekend for our trustees meeting, and I heard a lot about what was happening in Northfield, that what you've been experiencing in your communities has been experienced down in Northfield. And I'm just wondering, in your respective communities, and Senator May-Quade, I'll start with you, the response of the community, was it organic, or is it something that was organized? Like, how fervently and angry, in addition to being scared, was the community?
Yeah, I mean, it's both organic and something that just happens spontaneously, and I've said this a lot too, but what you're seeing on the ground is hockey moms with minivans and whistles, daycare dads with pickup trucks delivering groceries, grandmas with Costco accounts, labor leaders with iPhones, church leaders, imams, pastors, rabbi with unwavering faith. That is who has, risen up and organized together. It is hyper local. So I don't even know what goes on in Brad's community, even though we are connected to each other, because I'm so focused on my own. Northfield is closer to Apple Valley, where I live, than Minneapolis or St. Paul. And I only hear what's going on in Northfield from the representative there. We are so deeply organized, so deeply and hyper-localized, and it's decentralized. There is no one leader here.
And Representative Tabke, one thing I heard from a person in Northfield that just shook me because of just the imagery. She apologized for her car, and then she said, and I quote, "I was underground railroading food all night."
Yeah.
This is in Northfield.
Yeah, I mean, it's an everyday, all-day occurrence. We hundreds and hundreds of boxes of foods go out a day just in our, as Senator was talking about, we have resorted and have had to just take care of our communities. We have our heads down and we are working really hard to make sure that our communities are taken care of. ICE has had, checkpoints set up at mobile home parks, and no one can come in or out without having their papers checked. And it's just completely terrible things that you wouldn't expect to happen in the United States of America at this time. And so we have been having to resort to those kinds of things, and we have, it has been a very organic movement that we've learned from, in my community, we're in the suburbs, we learned from folks in Minneapolis as to how they were, because they started before we did, and Chicago started before they did, and all of those things. And so we've learned and stood on the shoulders of giants to make sure that we are taking care of people.
You guys weren't the only folks in town this week from Minnesota. Attorney General Keith Ellison was also there. He was in front of the Senate. I want to play something that Senator Ron Johnson said to your Attorney General and get your response on the other side.
Is it any wonder they're at hair trigger alert? A tragedy was going to happen, and you encouraged it. And you ought to feel damn guilty about it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, sit there and smirk. Smirk. It's sick. It is despicable.
Are you asking me for comment, Senator? Because everything you said was untrue. It was a nice theatrical performance, but it was all lies.
Senator Hassan.
You disgusting.
Oh. Wow. An unflappable Attorney General you have there, for one. But, Senator, when you see something like that, he's not just talking about Keith Ellison. He's talking about you guys. He's talking about your community members, those rabbis and those hockey moms you're talking about. He is equating or saying that the people in Minnesota brought this on themselves. What's your response to that?
Ron Johnson and Republicans brought this to Minnesota. And I want to be clear, the ICE presence in Minnesota is just the armed version of what Trump and Republicans have been doing in Minnesota all year, right? They cut our child care funding and our higher education funding and children cancer research and LIHEAP dollars and Medicaid. This is the armed version of that siege. And Ron Johnson voted for that. Ron Johnson is the one who sent an unaccountable, lawless paramilitary into the streets of Minnesota with no strings attached money, more than any other law enforcement agency in the United States of America. So I think what he's doing is projecting onto our wonderful Attorney General, who has been doing an incredible job trying to both keep the people of Minnesota safe, encouraging us to exercise our First Amendment rights. But he knows, Ron Johnson knows what he has done and what history will know about him. And I think you see that when he's yelling at Keith Ellison, he's yelling at himself.
Before we're out of time, Representative Tabke, I'm wondering what you make of Tom Homan, because it seems like he's come in and tried to to carve out a different path than Greg Bovino did. And obviously, some of what we've seen from the administration has been strictly rhetorical, but Tom Homan is the one person who now has followed through on some of what he has promised to, although, as you noted, conditions remain the same. So we do still have to keep tabs on whether or not ICE ultimately is withdrawn. But is he someone that actually you found local and state officials can genuinely work with?
I mean, I appreciate the fact that he's having conversations with folks, and it seems like that
Bars on the floor.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really hard thing to say. Is like people are actually talking to our communities, and this has all been like with the Ron Johnson, Senator Johnson things. Like it is all performance art, and it's all hurting people to hurt people to some other greater goal that we just don't understand. It is just a fascinating thing, and so I appreciate that he's doing the bare minimum of things, but also it is something that has to happen to talk to our communities, to understand what we're going through. We don't want ICE in our communities. We just don't want them there. It is important to take care of the bad guys, right? That what they talk about, and that's that. But that's not what they're doing. What they're doing is working on suppressing elections. What they're working on is hurting people, and we need to make sure that everyone is cognizant of that fact and keeps their eye on the ball as to where this is going.
Senator McQuaid, before we go, on this question of Tom Homan, let me just play something he said on Thursday on Fox News and get a response quickly on the other side.
Like any other surge operation, L.A., it ended. Los Angeles, it ended. Charlotte, it ended. New Orleans, it ended. This is ending the surge, but we're not going away. And let me say this, over 800 flights a day land in St. Paul, Minnesota. If we need to come back, we'll come back.
That sounded like a threat.
Yeah, it did. And it sounded like a promise. And I think it's why you hear the distrust for Tom Homan from myself and Representative Tabke is because they say, OK, we're leaving, but they didn't say we're leaving and we're not coming back. Or we're going to come back with warrants for specific people, with actual rules, with uniforms of any kind, uncovering our faces. It seems like they're going to continue. I mean, Minnesota is the test case. This is what they want to unleash on the rest of the country. And I think what we've seen here is that their first try was very unpopular, and I worry about what that second try looks like. And I worry that it's going to be Minnesota again.
Because what lessons did they learn while they were in Minnesota is the question that I have.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry.
Finish your thought.
Along with it, as we were here to talk to the federal delegations and Congress and senators about what is happening in Minnesota to make sure people understand. But then also along with that is ICE does not follow the law. They're lawless, reckless, and so by getting policy into legislation is important, and it's key for future judicial action and things like that. But they don't obey the law. They don't follow the Constitution of the United States, and we need to make sure that everyone here understands that and doesn't. We need to make sure that they don't have more money coming so that they are able to continue hurting us.
Do they understand that, real quick? The folks that you talk to on Capitol Hill, do they get it?
I think they do. I think we're under-describing what's happening in Minnesota. It's almost unbelievable what is happening and the deluge and the everydayness of it. I do think that they conceptually get it. I think you have to be there to actually see it and experience it.
Right.
Minnesota State Senator Erin McQuaid and State Representative Brad Tabke, thank you both very much, really, for coming on.